2,000 years ago, the 13-year-old ruler of a kingdom in Far East Asia ordered the building of his mausoleum. The boy would go on to conquer and unify the 7 warring states of a crumbling dynasty, making it one nation for the first time. He would later be known as Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of Qin, and would leave behind an enduring legacy that has shaped the China we know today. But the location and magnificence of his final resting place was lost for centuries.
He was laying some of the most intricate preparations to go on living after death.
Then, in 1974, workers in northwest China found fragments of a clay figure and unearthed one of the greatest archaeological discoveries in history.
Nothing like that had been discovered before that time. This was completely unprecedented.
Archaeologists would excavate thousands of terracotta soldiers, horses, and chariots. How were these life-size figures made? Why were they equipped with real weapons? And what other secrets are there buried deep beneath the colossal man-made mountain honoring China's first emperor? During the summer of 1974, near the central Chinese city of Xianyang, came news of a spectacular archaeological find. Buried some 15 feet below ground, not one, but hundreds of life-sized figures made of clay. An army of soldiers that would become known as the Terracotta Warriors. Archaeologist Yuan Zhangyi was one of the excavators working at the site.
这个兵马俑坑啊，发现了以后啊，当时一下子惊动了这个周围的人，是吧？震撼了中国，轰动了世界。
Teams of archaeologists descended upon the site, combing through dirt and clay, trying to solve a mystery over 2,000 years old.
当时发现的时候，大家不知道是个什么东西，就是啊，有的说这是神像啊，有的老太太还跑到那个烧香啊、磕头啊，请神仙保佑，还有的说呢这是瘟神啊，说把他拉上来以后，有个脚头就把他打碎了。
No one knew who created the figures, nor did they know when or why. Hundreds of objects were dug up during the excavation, but archaeologists' questions remained unanswered. Then they uncovered a vital clue to solving the mystery. A number of relics they could pin down to a specific time period. They were bronze weapons called a dagger axe. It consists of a long wooden shaft with a blade attached to the tip and was used to thrust at and stab the enemy. Researchers found on the blades of the weapons a statement written in a Chinese script from the 3rd century BC.
兵马俑坑啊，这里头出土些兵器，兵器上呢有些纪年的，相邦吕布为造，是吧？相邦呢是秦始皇时代的一个宰相了，一个宰相，是吧？这就从文字上就证实了，说兵马俑坑啊是秦始皇时代的，它不可能是其他的。
But only after more excavation did archaeologists learn the extent of the discovery. They attributed the vast tableau to the first emperor of China, Qin Shi Huang, the ruler who created the nation out of a group of warring provinces. The figures, dubbed the Terracotta Warriors, looked vividly lifelike, as if blood flowed through their veins. Standing in battle-ready formation, this army was unveiled for the first time in over 2,000 years. The Terracotta Army captured the public's imagination and fueled intense curiosity about that ancient era. Visitors wanted to know more about the ruler Qin Shi Huang and why the army of statue warriors came to be buried here. Complicating matters, Sima Qian, the historian who chronicled the emperor's life, offers little help.
Sima Qian wrote nothing of the existence of the terracotta warriors. There's nothing in his account that suggests to us that he was aware of their production and interment in the pits that surrounded the first emperor of Qin's mausoleum.
Answering questions about the terracotta warriors requires a journey back into China's early history. In 246 BC, a new king ascended the throne in the western state of Qin. Little was expected of him at the time. He was only 13 years old. His name was Ying Zhang, the ruler who would later become Qin Shi Huang, China's first emperor. Following royal tradition, upon taking the throne, the king ordered his prime minister, Liu Buwei, to fulfill a special command.
那么中国古代有一个传统，皇帝这个登基之后，第2年就开始营造他的陵墓。那么秦始皇13岁登基，那么14岁就开始营造他的陵墓。
The capital of Qin State, Xianyang, is one of the oldest cities in China. It was the eastern gateway to the famed Silk Road trade route and served as a center of politics, economy, and culture. Around 246 BC, on the outskirts of Xianyang, work began on what would become the young ruler's final resting place. The burial mound is 345 meters wide, 350 meters long, and 55 meters high, a structure bigger than the Great Pyramid of Giza. The location of the Terracotta Army site is almost a mile away from the emperor's burial mound. Because of the distance from Qin Shi Huang's tomb, archaeologists suspected there was more to the site than the life-size clay soldiers they uncovered in one of several pits below ground. Their investigations led to the conclusion that the soldiers served as bodyguards for Qin Shi Huang in the afterlife.
Some scholars think that they are defending it. Some think that they are a representation of the retinue that Qin Shi Huang would have traveled around his empire with.
经过详细的钻探，我们发现呢，这个1号兵马俑坑的确很大了。经过我们的视觉呢，发现兵马俑坑啊，1号兵马俑坑里头有陶俑陶马大约6000件呢，就浩浩荡荡，像一个庞大的地下军团一样。
兵马俑的发现呢，应该是在我们这个历史研究中具有非常重大的意义，对于我们研究当时的军事、政治、经济、文化，甚至当时的服饰都会有非常重大的这个意义它非常的写实性，非常真实。
During the 3rd century BC, the region we now call China was a bloody battleground. With the collapse of the centuries-old Zhou dynasty, 7 states erupted in endless wars for supremacy. The battles went on for decades. Finally, by 221 BC, under ruler Ying Zhang, the Qin defeated all the other states. And the reasons for his success can be found in the innovations that produced his remarkable army of the dead. The world has never seen anything quite like the terracotta warriors. The figures are tall and wear expressions that reveal the imposing character and fierce resolve of the legendary Qin dynasty soldiers.
这么他们这样一种排列这种精阵，我们能够感受到当时秦国军队的他的那种战士的那种精神风貌，非常的斗志昂扬所以他会秦始皇拥有这么强大的军队呢，所以他统一这个6国呢也是不难理解的
Pit 1 of the Terracotta Warriors displays the battle formation of the Qin military. The first 3 rows consist of archers facing forward. Behind them stand infantrymen in 38 rows, poised to strike upon the commander's order. The flanks are defended by troops on the periphery facing outward, watching for threats from any direction. Pit 1 contains a well-organized infantry corps of 6,000 men. The warriors once held weapons befitting their duties, and the shapes of their hands all differ accordingly. These are spears and dagger axes used by the infantrymen. Crossbows and bronze arrows allowed the warriors to attack enemies from a distance. During the excavation, one discovery took the archaeologists by surprise. Despite being buried for over 2,000 years, the swords of the infantrymen were still in pristine, rust-free condition. The Qin dynasty's metalwork was highly advanced for its time. Researchers examined why the weapons maintained their keen cutting edge and didn't rust.
看它到底是什么原因造成到现在还锋利无比，还这个光亮无比，是吧？那么经过检测，我们发现了一种元素在剑的表面，叫做氧化铬。那么这种氧化铬的主要作用就是防锈的。这个单纯的从氧化铬这个技术来讲，我们这个中国可能比西方早了1000多年，因为这个氧化铬这个镀铬技术，在西方在德国是大概30年代，在美国是50年代才出现的。
Bonding a chromium oxide coating to a metal surface requires temperatures of 1400 degrees Fahrenheit to toughen it and make it durable. Because of this advanced technology, the Qin state's weaponry and its superior troop strength gave its fighters an advantage over their enemies on the battlefield. The initial excavation of Pit 1 took over 2 years. During that time, the archaeologists uncovered 2 more pits in the vicinity. Pit 2 is located about 60 feet from Pit 1 and is smaller in size. But measuring 136 yards wide and 107 yards long, it's still 3 times larger than a soccer field. The figures and weapons here differ from Pit 1.
那么2坑呢，它是一个应该说是一个复合型的一个军阵啊。那么它这个军事内容呢，相对1号坑呢，要显得更加的复杂和多样。
After 20 months spent removing earth and timbers, archaeologists found Pit 2 to be full of chariots, archers, and cavalrymen. Soldiers with crossbows stood in formation at the front, while cavalrymen were positioned behind them. Flanked to the side was a mixed array of mid-sized chariots and infantrymen, with 3 armored men placed in each of the 4-horse chariots. Archaeologists estimate the number of horses in Pit 2 to be over 500. The horse figures revealed a feature previously unknown to experts.
我们在秦俑坑发现的这个骑兵，可以看到它的马鞍装饰是非常好的，也就是说，这个有了马鞍以后，人们骑在马背上就比较舒服，就有利于作战。
Before this discovery, scholars thought that saddles were first used in the Han Dynasty, the empire that followed the Qin. Saddles were known to greatly improve the speed, mobility, and tactical strategy of the cavalrymen. Another innovation found in Pit 2 involved the crossbowmen in the front ranks. Their powerful weapons had an automatic trigger, which may have been the reason for the Qin army's success in battle. Some experts think the crossbow had a range twice that of today's modern assault rifles. During battle, soldiers with crossbows must have shot bronze arrows continuously from the front lines, bombarding the enemy forces from as much as a mile away. Later research has found that the triggers of the crossbows had standardized parts. This would allow soldiers to quickly replace broken or defective triggers with a spare while on the battlefield.
这个标准化实际上是一个现代的一个概念。从目前秦俑坑里边的发掘能够看出来，就是确实当时是有了标准化的这样一个做法，就是制造兵器的时候，它会是一个系统。我们现在的学者认为，秦应该是我们中国最早的实行标准化生产的一个王朝。
Systemization was not limited to the crossbow. Most other weapons, including bronze arrowheads, spears, swords, and dagger axes, were standardized as well. It meant that Qin soldiers would not be hampered by broken weapons during battle, a key factor to their success. While Pits 1 and 2 contain thousands of infantrymen and cavalrymen, Pit 3 is the smallest and houses the Army's high-ranking officers. This separate command post was unusual. Today's modern warfare features superior officers issuing orders from a command post behind the lines. But this was rare in ancient battles, where strategies were different.
作为这个高级的指挥人员，不一定要亲自上阵去厮杀去了啊，他可以用他的智谋来指挥这支军队。
The Qin dynasty had well-trained soldiers, state-of-the-art weapons, and employed bold military tactics. This is how experts believe they fought. When the commanding officers gave the orders, soldiers with crossbows at the front lines attacked first, raining arrows down on the enemy. This would plunge the adversaries into chaos, while Qin infantrymen following behind would begin their advance. Charioteers and cavalrymen would then rush to outflank the enemy. With infantrymen charging head-on, cavalrymen and charioteers used a pincer action to surround the enemy and close off any escape route. The result, annihilation. With superior weapons and brilliant tactics, the Qin army defeated the neighboring states in less than a decade, setting the stage for a new era in the region's history. But even though he now had victory in his hands, Ying Zhang would crave something more. In 221 BC, following the end of nearly 2 centuries of war, a grand ceremony took place in the Xianyang Palace. Here, Ying Zhang, the 38-year-old ruler of Qin state, declared himself sovereign over the lands of the former Zhou dynasty. He assumed the new name Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of the new Qin dynasty.
When the king of Qin, Ying Zhang, crowned himself the first emperor of the Qin, That was an unprecedented move, and it shows that he understood the magnitude of what he had accomplished.
It suggests to us that he no longer saw himself merely as a terrestrial king, but rather he saw his role as being elevated to that of the ruler of an empire, and a role that could be viewed perhaps on cosmic proportions.
Qin Shi Huang would go on to unify his realm by imposing a series of reforms, abolishing the long-standing feudal system, centralizing the legal code, standardizing weights and measures, introducing a common currency, and establishing a single writing system. But despite his triumphant achievement, there was one goal that eluded Qin Shi Huang. It was his desire to conquer death, to be immortal, an emperor in the afterlife.
Qin Shi Huang's pursuit of immortality is known to us from the accounts of Sima Qian. This would not have been at all unusual at the time. What is unusual, however, is the great lengths to which he went in order to create his post-mortem environment.
The idea is clearly that the deceased would continue to live in death as they did in life, and they would want the comforts that they had in life.
Qin Shi Huang demanded that his mausoleum, which had been under construction since he was 14 years old, reflect the scale of his power and grandeur. Ancient records say over 700,000 laborers worked on the site for over 3 decades. They created a prominent earthen mound that rises to 150 feet while digging the emperor's royal resting place deep underground.
地下在这个史书中记载大概是叫凿三泉，那么我们认为它可能这个说的凿三泉就跟是挖透了3层地下室。那么按照这个高度呢，现在我们推测它地下应该在28、9米甚至30多米啊，这么一个深度。
It was brutal, back-breaking work that came with a high price. Archaeologists later discovered mutilated skeletons that told a horrifying story. Countless workers died of exhaustion and were buried in mass graves. Others were apparently killed to keep them from revealing the secrets and location of the tomb. It took 38 years to complete the mausoleum of Qin Shi Huang. His royal chamber was placed in the center of the burial mound. Inner and outer walls were built complete with watchtowers. Many pits containing the warriors of the terracotta army were also located nearby. The emperor's underground palace was constructed over 2,000 years ago, but it still awaits excavation.
这个秦始皇陵本身就是说，它以它的陵园为中心，向外辐射的范围很大。那么它的中心就是它的封土啊。那么在它封土周边有一个陵园，我们现在发现它的陵园的面积就在2.13平方公里，这是非常一个庞大的一个系统。那么到目前为止，我们应该说它是世界上最大的陵园之一。
Nearly 5 million visitors come annually to see the excavation site. What draws in most visitors is the massive terracotta army. Out of 8,000 life-size terracotta warriors found by excavators, not one of them appears to be the same.
Because of their highly realistic appearance, it is often said that the terracotta warriors were intended to be portraits. While we cannot answer this question definitively, what we do know is that their method of construction was highly modular and that this was work carried out by palace artisans.
Experts marvel at the creation of the terracotta warriors, saying they could not easily be made, even with modern technology. So how did Qin state artisans create them? This demonstration shows contemporary artisans creating similar figures out of the local clay. If the clay is too wet or too dry, the sculpted figure would fall apart. So back then, Qin artisans used a special technique to create the warriors. In this case, they made clay ropes and formed the figure from bottom to top. As a result, the hollow statues would be less likely to collapse under their own weight. This method also lent itself to individualizing each figure. By adjusting the thickness of the clay ropes, the sculptors could make different shaped bodies. Once the bodies were complete, they would add the finishing touches, such as armor details. Complex parts, such as hands and feet, were made separately and dried before being fitted to the bodies. Experts think the heads were not based on the craftsman's imagination, but instead modeled on real soldiers. Studies of the figures show that no two are exactly alike. From their facial features and apparel, it's possible to discern differences in the warrior's age, function, and rank, as well as determining where in the country they came from.
当然也包括我们这个关中地区的，那么还可能包括有其他地区的，比如说这个东方的，甚至一些这个巴蜀地区的呀，或者更西方的一些人种呢，我们可能在它的这个面型上，我们基本上都能够有所反映。
In 1999, excavators found different terracotta figures in a pit located not far from the others. They were in sharp contrast to the soldiers and officers of the Terracotta Army. To begin with, they're not dressed in military outfits or wearing any type of armor, nor are they aligned in a group formation. Decorative walls from the later Han Dynasty provide important clues. The bare-chested figures are in dynamic poses, very different from their military counterparts.
实际上就是在表演这种节目的这么一种陶俑，它实际上就反映了当时这个宫廷里边呢帝王这个生活的另外一个方面的一个内容啊。
Royal life during Qin Shi Huang's reign had all the trappings of luxury and splendor. According to historian Sima Qian, 10,000 court ladies chosen from all over the country lived in the emperor's palace. They served at the pleasure of Qin Shi Huang, with the best dancers performing during banquets. At these banquets, acrobatic troops also displayed their skills for the court. They were called baiji, a word referring to entertainments that gave 100 different joys to the audience. Included in the performances were demonstrations of physical dexterity and strength. The baiji were also known to travel to the battlefields to demonstrate their skills and boost morale among the troops in the field. Acrobatics is one of the oldest arts in China, a tradition famously carried on to this day. The continuing excavation unearthed other artifacts, elegant bronze cranes, swans, and geese, which symbolize longevity. In yet another pit, archaeologists found stone armor made for Qin Shi Huang's warriors, leading researchers to wonder what other treasures will be revealed next. As first emperor of China, Qin Shi Huang wanted to enjoy the comforts and treasures of his empire, not only during his lifetime, but in the afterlife as well. That's why his nearly 1 square mile mausoleum complex contains many rare and priceless objects from throughout his realm.
秦始皇宫啊，这个帝王陵园呢，是中国历代帝王陵园中间规模最大，保存较好，埋藏最为丰富的 一座帝王陵园了，就是。目前我们在这个考古勘探了，已经发现的陪葬坑达到180多座，说整个秦始皇陵园像一座丰富的地下文物宝库一样。
We know that he survived assassination plots, so he must have been cognizant of that fact, that his life could end at any moment. We know that he traveled with a large retinue of soldiers when he surveyed his new empire, so as to protect against assassination plots. So on the one hand, it seems like he was quite concerned, almost obsessed with dying. But on the other hand, he was laying some of the most intricate preparations to go on living after death.
The emperor's mausoleum has yet to be excavated, but many features of the elaborate world Qin Shi Huang had built underground have been unearthed, thanks to the work of archaeologists and artisans. The carefully organized effort to reconstruct the world of the emperor begins with labeling artifacts and fragments found at the site.
这个标签有2个作用。第一呢，这个标签呢，我们可以通过这个标签呢，看到这个陶片它的出土区域，它具体的出土是属于哪一个陶俑。第二个呢，也是便于我们查找。我们在修复的过程中呢，我们很容易会找到这个陶片。
As part of the restoration process, pieces of the relics are carefully cleaned, using special tools to avoid damaging them. Then, a special glue is delicately applied to broken portions of the object to assure proper bonding. These craftsmen know they're not only reassembling pieces of an historic artifact, but also restoring pieces of lost time, bringing the past to life. This is how many of the thousands of terracotta warriors have been reconstructed. During the immense excavation and restoration project, researchers encountered another surprise. Today, the warriors appear reddish-brown and gray, consistent with the color of the clay in the area. But in removing 2,000 years of dirt and debris from the surface of the figures, traces of vibrant paint were detected. Archaeologists have concluded that the terracotta warriors looked far different when they were originally created.
这个秦俑的颜色非常丰富，有很多种，红、黄、绿、紫，还有黑色。你像这件俑出土了以后，基本上它的彩绘残存比较少，大部分集中在各个领子比较隐蔽的部位。
This is how some of the warriors looked when they were found buried in the dirt. Once the figures were exposed to the air, the colors quickly disappeared like a mirage. So how did the terracotta army appear at the time of Qin Shi Huang's reign? Based on the research of archaeologists who have studied these figures for over 40 years, the warriors would have looked very different. The finished warriors would have been a splendid, awe-inspiring sight 2,200 years ago. After forging one nation out of a cauldron of warring states, Qin Shi Huang did not retreat inside his lavish palace. He made a number of inspection tours of his empire, traveling under the protection of his guards.
On at least 5 occasions, the first emperor made a tour of his empire. It seems, in fact, that he really enjoyed doing this, that he preferred getting out of the capital and surveying the lands that he had conquered. I think it's part of human nature to want to see, in effect, what you own.
This bronze chariot found in Pit 2 shows the remarkable craft of the Qin dynasty artisans. It's a half-sized replica of the one Qin Shi Huang rode during his journeys.
对，这个我们的铜车嘛，被号称是青铜之冠。为什么叫青铜之冠？就是不管是从技术角度来讲，还是从一些其他的因素来讲，它的这个都是到目前为止我们发现的这种体量最大的，也是锯齿最复杂的一件这个青铜器。那么它光这个零件就3000多件儿。如果我们现在用现在的这种手法去把它焊接也好，这个拼对也好，都是非常艰难的一个。
Originally, 2 bronze chariots were found completely smashed in a pit, just 20 yards from Qin Shi Huang's burial chamber. This smaller vehicle, with a high canopy, is a half-size model of the escort chariot, which rode ahead of the emperor in a procession. Together, the presence of these 2 chariots may represent Qin Shi Huang's expectation that he would be able to continue touring his underground empire in the afterlife. The fascination generated by Qin Shi Huang's terracotta warriors continues decades after they were first discovered in 1974. But at the site of the first emperor's mausoleum, one great mystery lingers. Though hundreds of relics have been discovered and excavated, Qin Shi Huang's burial chamber has remained unexplored.
这到底陵墓里头有些什么东西现在还说不太清楚。不过司马迁史记里头做了一些记载了说里边的埋藏的东西很多很多，说里边呢还有上具天文，下具地理，以水印为江河大海了，就是。
Since Sima Qian wrote his account a century after the emperor's death, scholars have doubted his descriptions of the burial chamber. But recent studies have found high concentrations of mercury at the site.
比方说我们的这种遥感，我们的这种高光谱，是吧？我们的地磁法等等这些世界上现在最先进一些高科技的一些手段，我们都全部用在这个秦始皇陵的探测上了。我们发现整个秦始皇陵封土下的汞的含量，也就是我们所说的水银，汞的含量比周围的土地里头汞的含量要高出20多倍。
One ancient method of preserving bodies after death involves deep burials in airtight conditions. This keeps oxygen from reaching the corpse and slows down decomposition. When this tomb in Hunan province was opened, archaeologists made a remarkable find. Inside was a Han Dynasty noblewoman known as the Lady of Dai. Her body had been buried nearly 40 feet underground. No one anticipated a discovery like this. Though her death occurred 21 centuries ago, the Lady of Dai's body is well preserved. Most of her internal organs are intact, and blood still remains in her veins. Her skin is moist and elastic, like that of the living. Her discovery led researchers to consider a new theory.
でおそらく、その魔王隊幹部の女性と同じようなことが始皇帝についても言えるかと思います。まだ発掘されてないんですけども、つまり地下深くに密接した空間を作るんですね。そうすると遺体を腐らせるような腐敗する菌が繁殖しないと。
More clues representing how the emperor's body may have been preserved appeared in other parts of China. This is a shroud made of jade for a king of the Han Dynasty who died 2,000 years ago.
実際にその玉をまといますと腐敗が進むことを少し遅らせるという意味はあったと思いますね。漢代にはそれが見られるんですけど、おそらく始皇帝も、資料などによりますとそういう玉衣をまとって埋葬されていたと考えられます。
210 BC. Qin Shi Huang, on another inspection tour of his empire, was struggling with illness. Despite his search for the elixir of life that he believed would grant him immortality, he died at 50 years old. Now began his last earthly journey, back to Xi'an and his final resting place. He had created a small-scale version of his empire and his palace underground, where he could oversee the world he unified for eternity. It had taken some 700,000 workers 38 years to build Qin Shi Huang's royal tomb. Then, in 210 BC, the emperor, together with his many priceless treasures, his childless wives, and his dreams of immortality, was sealed in his burial chamber. Historian Sima Qian, writing in his records of the Grand Historian, described in detail what the emperor's tomb was to have contained.
The sun, moon, and stars were drawn in the sky to bless and protect the afterlife. Underneath the stars was a miniature version of geographical features. Mercury filled the river so as never to dry up, and torches burning mermaid oil will never be blown out.
Qin Shi Huang had unified China for the first time, establishing a new form of government, uniform laws, weights and measures, and a single writing system. Ancient historians say the underground world he created reflected the grandeur of his many achievements. But for now, there's no way to know for certain whether the accounts describing Qin Shi Huang's tomb are true. The Chinese government has steadfastly refused to excavate the first emperor's burial chamber, a position at odds with what many in the general public would prefer.
整个秦始皇陵地宫的发掘，目前为止我们没有这样的计划，因为从某种程度上来讲，我们本身的发掘过程就是一种破坏。
这里头在不发掘的情况下，能不能用现代化的科学手段来探测一下里边有些什么东西，啊，这个我觉得随着科学的进步是可以做到的。
For now, we can only peer into the emperor's tomb through ancient writings and our imagination. During his life, Qin Shi Huang hungered for immortality. And now, over 2,000 years after his death, thanks to the work of archaeologists and artisans and the unforgettable terracotta army that still guards his memory, he's achieved it.